Something great and unusual is happening right now. We are not talking about a coincidence or a simple report. This message has come to you because there is something you need to hear, something urgent intended only for those who have the courage to open their eyes and their hearts. A revelation, celestial, was brought directly from Archangel Saint Michael and the Virgin Mary, and it carries a call that can transform everything. But pay attention and ignore this message. It can be a mistake that will cost you more than you can imagine. How many times have you had that feeling that something bigger is happening in the world, even if you don't know how to explain exactly what it is? Maybe you felt a discomfort, a restlessness deep in your soul. What if this feeling is a divine warning, a whisper coming from above? Today, you are not here by chance. Every word you hear from now on was destined to reach you exactly at this moment. What will be revealed is not a simple story that we hear and soon forget. It is a beacon of light in the midst of the storm, a message that can illuminate your steps when everything around you seems to be immersed in darkness. There is a reason you have stopped here. If you have ever felt, at some point, that the signs around you are becoming more evident, more clear and disturbing, this message was made for you. Prepare for something greater. This is not just a narrative of faith, it is a direct call to your soul. Saint Michael the Archangel, the commander of the heavenly armies, and the Virgin Mary, our Heavenly Mother, are speaking to us clearly and directly. There is no time for distractions or uncertainties. This is your chance to open your eyes to the invisible and listen to the voice that resonates from the heavens. It is an invitation to something deeper than a simple reflection. It is an invitation to action, to preparation, and spiritual awakening. Do not think that this message is intended for others or that it does not apply to you. When heaven speaks, it speaks to each of us individually, looking into the most intimate part of our being. The question is not whether God is speaking. The question is, are you willing to listen? If you stay until the end of this message, you will be able to discover heavenly secrets that have been shared to strengthen your faith and protect you and your family from the challenges that lie ahead. Challenges that are not only material but spiritual, an invisible battle that has already begun and is shaping everything we know. Every second of this message is not a mere passing of time, but a step towards understanding what is really happening around you. But here is the warning: not listening until the end can be an irreversible mistake. We are not here to preach fear, but to bring clarity and preparation. This message is like a compass that points the path in times of chaos. It is urgent, it is direct, and it was intended for you. It is not just about information. It is about a greater truth that can be the key to your inner peace in times of uncertainty. How many times do we miss opportunities because we do not listen, because we let distractions take us away from what matters? How many times have we looked back with regret for not having acted in time? Today, you are faced with a unique opportunity to understand what is happening in the world and, more importantly, how it directly affects you. Let me be even clearer: you have been called to listen, to reflect, and to prepare yourself. What comes next will be revealing. From now on, stay attentive because every word matters. Do not think that this is just another common message. It is a divine call to strengthen your soul and guide you in a world full of uncertainty. When Saint Michael the Archangel and the Virgin Mary manifest themselves, they not only bring warnings, but also hope. They show us that even in the midst of chaos, there is a path of protection, a greater purpose, and a promise of victory for those who have the courage to believe and act. This is not an ordinary warning. It is an invitation to awaken and become aware of the spiritual battle that is already around us. So, I make a request of you, stay with me until the end of this journey. If you have come this far, it is because this message is not a coincidence. It was sent to you for a reason. Do not ignore what heaven is trying to tell you. Open your heart, strengthen your mind, and prepare yourself, because together we will uncover the hidden truth that can change your life forever. We are not facing just any story. What you will hear next is something that transcends stories and popular beliefs. It is a warning sent directly from heaven, and its objective is to prepare each one of us for events that have begun to manifest themselves, even if many do not realize it. It is no coincidence that the Archangel Saint Michael and the Virgin Mary are manifesting themselves with such clarity and urgency. The prophecy is clear. We are living in decisive days, and ignoring the signs can cost us dearly. But why now? Why did this call arrive precisely at this moment? The messages that have been revealed are not just warnings about future events. They are an invitation to a complete transformation, a call to open our eyes, strengthen our spirit, and act with faith. Saint Michael, the leader of the heavenly armies, brings a warning full of truth and responsibility. He is not just a protective angel. He is the guardian of divine justice and defender of the children of God against the forces of darkness. Beside him, we have the Virgin Mary, who, with her infinite kindness and maternal love, extends her hand in a link full of love and hope. She does not appear to cause fear or terror. She appears to show that there is hope even in the middle of adversity. Her objective is not about predicting what is coming next, but about the fortification of our spirits against adversity. The prophecy was not revealed to paralyze us, but to prepare us. You may wonder what this preparation means. Why are Saint Michael and Mary asking us to pay attention now? The answer is simple. Because time is running out. The signs that were once discreet and distant are now wide open all around us. It is impossible not to notice how the world finds itself in a state of growing unrest, natural disasters, conflicts, divisions, and a spiritual void that consumes so many souls. Saint Michael reminds us that we are in the midst of an invisible battle. It is not just about wars and external catastrophes, but about an intense spiritual struggle waged within each of us, a struggle between faith and fear, between truth and the illusions that the world offers. And here is the most important detail. This battle is not lost or won collectively, but individually, in each heart. It becomes clear that heaven is attentive to our choices and that, in the midst of darkness, Each small decision can bring us closer or further away from the divine light. You don't have to be perfect to hear this call. You don't have to have all the answers or live a life without flaws. The message that heaven brings us is not a judgment, but an invitation to renewal. The Archangel Saint Michael extends his sword as a sign of justice, but also as a symbol of protection for those who seek the truth. The Virgin Mary, in her infinite sweetness, reminds us that there is always time to change, but this time is limited. While many believe they have all the time in the world to reflect and transform themselves, Mary warns us not to leave for tomorrow what can be done today. Each day of procrastination is a wasted opportunity to find true peace. This prophecy was not written in vain. It was not a simple message intended for a select few. It is a universal call to all those who wish to find refuge in faith in times of uncertainty. You may be wondering, what exactly do Saint Michael and Mary want me to do? It is a valid and necessary question. The answer will be explored in the next parts of this journey. But one thing needs to be clear. Since you are now hearing this message, it is not by chance. Something inside of you has already realized that there is more going on than what we see on the surface. The heavens are moving, and the choice to listen or ignore will be yours. But know this, the voice of God never calls in vain. He always gives us the chance to see beyond understanding and to act. Today, the invitation is before you. You are part of this story, and this prophecy is a reminder that the path is still open, but only for those who have the courage to walk it. You have already stopped to observe the world around you carefully. Perhaps, behind the routine and distractions of everyday life, you felt that something was out of place. It is not just a vague feeling. The signs are multiplying and becoming increasingly clear. Michael the Archangel warns us that the world is in a state of transition, and this change brings with it challenges that can no longer be ignored, wars that seem endless, natural disasters that are increasingly intense and frequent, the increase in social divisions, the weakening of family ties, the growth of selfishness. All these are pieces of a bigger puzzle, and this picture is a reflection of something deeper, a spiritual disconnect. Humanity, in its search for control and power, has moved away from the source of all life, God. When faith becomes fragile or non-existent, fear, chaos, and indifference take over. That's why Mary reminds us in her messages, the world is plunged into darkness because it has removed God from its center. But make no mistake, these signs are not just major global events. The signs are also present in the small things of everyday life, the constant anxiety, the existential emptiness that many people feel even though they have everything materially, human relationships that are more fragile, hearts that are more hardened, and love for others that has become a challenge instead of a natural reflex. These signs are not here to paralyze us with fear, but to awaken us. Saint Michael exhorts us, "You are seeing, but not yet understanding." The current crisis is not just external, it is within each one of us. Our heart is the true battlefield, and that is precisely why heaven has manifested itself so clearly. It is not by chance that, in different parts of the world and through different messengers, the same warnings have echoed: prepare yourselves. The call is to open your eyes and recognize that these events are not isolated coincidences. They are signs of the times, signs that invite us to reflect and act. See the natural catastrophes, for example. Many will say this has always happened, but Mary invites us to look beyond the obvious. The earth groans under the weight of humanity's sins are words that may sound strong, but that reflect the urgency of the situation. It is not about arbitrary punishment, but about the consequences of choices that have distanced human beings from harmony with God, with creation, and with themselves. Likewise, global conflicts are not just political or economic disputes. They are manifestations of hearts hardened by greed and lack of love. Saint Michael warns us that, before being physical wars, these struggles begin in the invisible, in battles fought in thoughts, emotions, and human attitudes. And what can we say about our current society, which values individualism so much and compassion so little? Indifference to the suffering of others, selfishness disguised as self-reliance, and the cult of materialism are clear symptoms of a deep spiritual crisis. This is the true root of the problem. Humanity has lost sight of what is eternal and has sought meaning in fleeting things. But the good news is that there is still time. The signs were not sent to condemn us, but to give us a chance to change. Heaven is offering us a way back. When the Virgin Mary speaks to us about prayer, fasting, and reconciliation, she is not just proposing religious rituals. She is teaching us how to strengthen our faith in times of trial. Do not think that you are alone in this journey. These signs, which may seem scary at first glance, are also reminders that God is present and calls us to get out of inertia. Saint Michael reminds us that time is running out, but there is still hope for those who have the courage to act. The current crisis is a test, but it is also an opportunity, and the fact that you are here listening to these words shows that heaven is seeking you. Do not ignore the signs. They are not just around us, they are within us, calling us to a spiritual awakening before it is too late. The question is, are you ready to listen and act? We have come to the heart of this journey, the revelations brought by Archangel Saint Michael. He is not just one angel among many, but the commander of the heavenly armies, the one who stood against the forces of darkness from the beginning. Saint Michael does not speak in vain. His words are clear, direct, and loaded with power. His alert is not just a warning about what is coming. It is a call to choose which side we want to be on in the spiritual battle that has already begun. In his appearances and messages, Saint Michael does not promise a life without difficulties. He tells us of times of tribulation that will test not only our physical resistance, but, above all, our faith. He reveals to us that humanity is being swallowed by a wave of indifference and despair, and that the real danger is not only in external events, such as catastrophes and wars, but in the fragility of the souls that have turned away from God. Saint Michael reminds us that the greatest victory of darkness is to make you believe that you are alone and helpless. This is the lie that weakens us. The spiritual crisis is silent but devastating. When faith weakens, fear grows stronger, and that is exactly what the forces contrary to the light feed on. But he does not come only with warnings. He brings clear and firm guidance. Strengthen yourself spiritually, because that will be the only force capable of resisting what is to come. He tells us about the importance of three fundamental pillars: prayer, vigilance, and conversion. These are not symbolic or generic words. These pillars are real instruments to protect the soul and heart in the face of trials. Prayer, according to Saint Michael, is not a mechanical or repetitive act. It is a sincere surrender, a deep dialogue with God where each word spoken is an act of trust. He exhorts us, "Prayer is your greatest weapon. To move away from it is to disarm yourself on the battlefield." But prayer alone is not enough. You need to be vigilant. The vigilance that he asks for not only refers to what happens outside of us, but to what happens inside. How many times do we allow thoughts of doubt, resentment, and indifference to enter our hearts without resistance? Saint Michael reminds us that the true spiritual battle happens in the small choices of everyday life. Being vigilant is being aware of each decision, avoiding that which can distance us from God. Finally, he speaks about conversion, an invitation that requires humility and courage. Converting does not only mean changing behavior, but transforming the heart and rediscovering the purpose of living according to divine teachings. It is not an isolated event, but an ongoing process, where each day is a new opportunity to start over. Saint Michael makes it clear that this change needs to start now. Not tomorrow, not when it is convenient, but today, because by postponing, we may be opening space for darkness. Furthermore, he reveals that there are traps scattered along the way. These are not just obvious disasters, but subtle temptations that weaken our faith, the feeling of constant discouragement, the belief that nothing matters, the addiction to distractions that keep us from prayer. These are the little traps that can lead us to spiritual ruin without us realizing it. Yet, his message is not one of despair but of hope. He assures us that those who remain firm and vigilant will be sustained by heaven. His sword symbolizes not only justice, but divine protection for those who seek refuge in God. Even in the midst of trials, there is a promise of victory, not a human victory, but the victory of the divine plan. Saint Michael reminds us that no matter how difficult the times we live in are, those who remain faithful will be like lights that shine in the midst of darkness. He invites us to be beacons of hope, living examples of faith to help not only ourselves, but also others, especially those who are lost and disoriented. And here is the big question he asks us. When the moment comes, will you be ready to resist? Because faith will be tested in a direct and personal way. This test is not something distant, it will touch each one of us. Make no mistake, preparation is not optional, it is essential. It isn't a symbolic gesture, but an attitude of life. Time is running out, and the forces of darkness are more active than ever. They work to weaken, confuse, and lead humanity away from the right path. But those who trust in divine protection and keep their faith will not be alone. Saint Michael concludes his message with a powerful reminder: do not be afraid, but be alert. This phrase echoes as a call to abandon apathy and cultivate a firm and unshakable faith. If you have come this far, it is because this message was intended for you. Now the question is, how will you respond to Saint Michael's warning? Amid the firm and direct words of Saint Michael the Archangel, a softer but equally urgent voice arises, the voice of the Virgin Mary. Her call is not just a warning but a cry full of love, like that of a mother who tries to protect her children from imminent danger. Mary does not come to condemn, but to welcome. She does not bring fear but hope. However, her message is still clear: time is running out, and we need to prepare ourselves before it is too late. The Virgin Mary tells us to remember something essential: we are not alone, even in the darkest hours. She remains by our side as a mother and intercessor. Her heart is open to hear our anguish and to dry our tears. But Mary also warns us that the inevitable suffering of humanity is not a punishment, but a consequence of the wrong choices that have distanced people from God. She asks us to wake up, to open our eyes before the consequences become overwhelming. With all the tenderness of a mother, she offers us a path of return, prayer, fasting, and unity. These are not empty or outdated practices, but powerful ways to strengthen the soul and reconnect with the divine purpose. For Mary, prayer is not just a repetition of words, but a sincere dialogue with God where we surrender our weaknesses and find strength. Fasting, in turn, is more than a material renunciation. It is an act of spiritual discipline that purifies the heart and makes us more aware of what really matters. And then comes the request that is perhaps the most challenging: unity. Mary reminds us that in a divided world full of conflicts, we need to be instruments of reconciliation, bearers of peace where there is discord. She calls us to reach out to others, to forgive and build bridges instead of digging chasms. Division is a weapon of darkness, but unity is a force that multiplies light. Maybe you are thinking, how can I be an agent of peace in a world so full of chaos? And this is where the Virgin Mary gives us her answer: start within yourself. The first step to bring peace to the world is silencing the inner turmoil, aligning the heart with God, and allowing the Holy Spirit to guide each of our actions. But Mary does not limit herself to a generic appeal. In her messages, she points out specific signs that we cannot ignore. She talks about the dangers that haunt families, the trivialization of evil, and the indifference with which many view faith. She shows us that destruction will not come only from outside, but from the lack of love and purpose that corrodes human relationships. She asks us to pray the Rosary every day. And why? Because the Rosary is a prayer of protection and power. Each Hail Mary is a flame of light that illuminates the darkness and strengthens our trust in the divine promises. Mary knows that family prayer is a fortress, a spiritual shield that can protect entire homes from the influences of darkness. Furthermore, she talks about the importance of welcoming pain with hope. Yes, There will be trials, yes, the path will not be easy. But Mary reminds us that suffering can also be redemptive when lived with faith. The cross is not a sign of defeat, but a symbol of victory. And even though her words have a tone of urgency, they also carry a comforting promise. Those who hear and follow her call will be protected. This does not mean that they will be free from hardship, but that they will never be alone. She will be there, walking alongside her children, giving, guiding, and strengthening them. However, there is a crucial point in her message: free will. Mary cannot force anyone to change because true love respects freedom. But she warns us that every decision counts, and that remaining indifferent or procrastinating can be fatal. Maybe now you feel a weight on your heart, or a desire to reflect. This is no coincidence. When a mother speaks with love, her call reverberates in the souls of her children. If you have come this far, it is because something inside you recognizes that this message is real and urgent. Mary asks us not to be just listeners, but practitioners of faith because, as she herself remembers, the time to act is now. But her message doesn't end there. It also speaks of a triumph. Her immaculate heart will triumph. And this is not just a promise, but a victory that begins within each heart that chooses truth and light. And now, what will we do with this call? Will we ignore it or respond with faith to the messages of Saint Michael the Archangel and the Virgin Mary? Beyond the main warnings of Saint Michael and Mary, there are hidden details that only those with an attentive heart can perceive. Many times, we focus on the main warning, and we let the nuances pass by, the small revelations that carry deep lessons. These details are not there by chance. They are invitations for deeper reflection and immediate action. Saint Michael does not only speak about spiritual warfare. He warns us of the danger of subtle distractions that weaken the soul: technology, social networks, excess information. All of this has distanced us from the necessary silence to hear the voice of God. The Archangel reminds us that the enemy rarely acts in an obvious way. He acts in the details, in the small concessions we make without realizing. A thought of doubt here, a moment of procrastination there. And when we realize it, we are far from the right path. One of those hidden details in the messages is the emphasis on the constancy of prayer. It is not enough to pray only in moments of despair, or when we feel weak. Prayer needs to be a habit, something that nourishes our soul daily. When Mary asks us to recite the Rosary, she is not just giving us a suggestion. She is offering us a powerful spiritual weapon against apathy and the discouragement that can lead us to the abyss. Another important detail is the call to continuous conversion. Many people believe that conversion is a unique event, a specific moment of transformation. But Mary shows us that it is a daily process. To convert is to abandon every day what separates us from God and weakens us spiritually, recognizing our mistakes, seeking forgiveness, and having the courage to start over as many times as necessary. Furthermore, the messages tell us about the danger of self-sufficiency, this modern idea that we can do everything on our own, without needing God or anyone. Exaggerated independence is a trap because it disconnects us from what is essential: our relationship with the divine and with others. Saint Michael insists that true strength comes from God, not from yourself. This does not mean passivity but confidence, recognizing that in times of crisis, we need to rely on faith and not just on human logic. Another hidden detail is what Mary tells us about the little everyday miracles that many of us ignore. Have you ever noticed how, even in the midst of chaos, small signs of kindness and hope appear all around us? An unexpected reunion, an answered prayer, an act of compassion. These moments are not coincidences, but signs that God is present even in the storms. The Virgin Mary asks us not to despise these manifestations of grace, because they strengthen our hope and help us remember that we are not alone. There is also a warning about modern times, often disguised as advances and progress. Not all that glitters is gold, nor every quick fix is true. The desire for immediate answers, for instant pleasures, makes us vulnerable to the false promises of the world. Saint Michael and Mary teach us that true victory does not come from speed, but from perseverance and patience. And there is something even deeper: the call to sacrifice, not sacrifice in the sense of purposeless suffering, but that act of renunciation that strengthens us spiritually, renouncing pride, forgiving those who hurt us, abandoning vices and bad habits. All this is a sacrifice that, contrary to what it seems, brings relief to the soul. Mary reminds us that by giving up something for the love of God, we receive in return a peace that the world cannot offer. Another essential detail in the messages is about our responsibility towards others. We cannot only worry about our own soul. We are called to be light in the lives of those who are lost, helping those who are disoriented and offering a word of comfort to those who are desperate. Often, a simple gesture of kindness can be the sign that someone needs not to give up. And finally, there is a detail that often escapes us: silence. Many people get discouraged when they don't feel an immediate answer to their prayers. But Mary teaches us that God's silence is not absence, but preparation. It is in silence that He works in our hearts, strengthening them for the next battles. Saint Michael reinforces this: don't confuse God's silence with indifference. He never abandons you. At the end of this reflection, it is clear that the heavenly messages are not just a warning, but a manual to live with faith and courage in the present. The details that many miss are actually tools to resist temptations, to stand firm, and to transform fear into confidence. And now the question that remains is: are you attentive to the details that heaven is trying to show you? The message of Saint Michael the Archangel and the Virgin Mary makes it very clear that we are living in a spiritual war that is not just physical or visible, but that takes place in dimensions that we cannot see, but that we feel with every decision, thought, and attitude. And here is the most important part: you are part of this battle, whether you realize it or not. There is no neutrality when the soul is the field of dispute. Saint Michael warns us that each human being has a crucial role in this war. Do not think that this fight is reserved only for spiritual leaders or holy figures. Each one of us, in our routine and daily choices, strengthens or weakens the forces of good. Each thought of love or hate, each act of faith or doubt, is like a flame that feeds the light, or a veil that reinforces the darkness. And that is why he asks us what kind of warrior you want to be. Because it is not enough to believe in God. Faith without action is like a rusty sword in a useless war. The Virgin Mary, with her tenderness, reminds us that we are not alone in this battle. I am with you every step of the way. She calls us to abandon fear and trust in the power of prayer. She teaches us that we don't need to fight with our own strength, because God is our fortress. But still, we are invited to act, to resist, and to advance. This spiritual battle does not manifest itself only in great trials, but also in small daily temptations. How many times does spiritual laziness prevent us from praying? How many times does haste make us respond with impatience? How many times do we let pride distance us from the people we love? These details are actually the battlefields where faith is put to the test. Saint Michael reminds us that the enemy is cunning and that his greatest triumph is getting us used to sin and indifference. He says the greatest danger is not falling, but remaining fallen. That is why vigilance is so important. We cannot afford to let our guard down. Being vigilant is observing not only external events, but also the internal movements of our soul. It is identifying when we are being dominated by resentment, envy, or hopelessness. Mary calls us to what she calls invisible weapons: faith, humility, and forgiveness. These seem simple, but they are the most powerful tools against the forces of darkness. As the enemy tries to divide us, Mary invites us to reconciliation. While fear tries to paralyze us, Saint Michael reminds us that those who trust in God will never be defeated in this spiritual war. Each of us has a unique mission. Perhaps you have been called to be an example of patience for your family. Perhaps your mission is to be a voice of faith in times of doubt. Perhaps, even with your flaws, you have been chosen to lead others by the example of a genuine conversion. Whatever your role, it is essential. There are no expendable soldiers in the army of God. And remember, this battle is not won with aggression, but with faith, love, and perseverance. Saint Michael calls us to be warriors of light, and not destroyers. He does not incite us to hatred, but to zeal for the truth. True strength is not in violence, but in the constancy of those who remain firm even in the face of storms. And there is an important detail: the final victory has already been promised. The Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph. But until that day comes, we are called to be witnesses of faith and resistance. We are invited to be lights that shine in the darkness, not only to illuminate our own way, but to guide those who are lost. Mary reminds us that the spiritual battle is not won with grandiose acts, but with simple and sincere gestures. Every prayer made with faith, every act of charity, every forgiveness given from the heart are like shields that protect us and swords that drive away despair. If you think you are not strong enough, sufficient, or not prepared, remember this: God does not choose the capable, He enables the chosen. And if you are listening to this message now, it is because you have been called to a role in this battle. The big question is, how will you respond? Heaven does not ask us for perfection, but disposition. Saint Michael makes it clear, the first step is to stand up and say yes to God's call, even with fear, even with doubts, because true faith is not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward even in the face of it. And now, as we continue our journey, remember, every little decision you make is part of this battle, and every act of faith is a victory that echoes not only on earth, but also in heaven. If up to this point we understand that we are in an intense spiritual battle, the next question is inevitable. How do we prepare to face what is coming? Saint Michael the Archangel and the Virgin Mary gave us more than warnings. They gave us a plan of action, and this plan involves both the soul and the body. Spiritual preparation is the foundation, but we cannot neglect physical care, because the trials that will come will test both. Strengthening the soul, spiritual preparation. The first instruction of Saint Michael is clear: constant prayer. Prayer is not just a religious habit, it is a direct line to God, a shield against the forces of darkness, and a source of strength in times of discouragement. He exhorts us to have moments of daily prayer, even if short, but more intense and sincere. Prayer does not need to be long, but it needs to be true. The Rosary, in particular, is described by Mary as a weapon of light. Each mystery meditated on strengthens our faith and blocks the negative influences around us. Confession is also an essential part of this preparation. Mary reminds us that we need to cleanse our hearts of the weights we carry. Confession is not an act of humiliation, but a gift of liberation. When we reconcile with God, we also reconcile with ourselves and with those around us. A heart free from the weight of guilt has more strength to face any adversity. Another pillar of spiritual preparation is reading and meditating on the Scriptures. Saint Michael reinforces that the Word of God is like a map that guides us in the midst of storms. How many times do we look for answers in the wrong places, when they are already present in the sacred words? Mary asks us to seek comfort and direction in the Scriptures daily, because in them we find the immutable truth. Finally, we are called to live charity. There is no true faith without love for one's neighbor. And here is the important detail: charity is not just a visible gesture like donating or helping. It begins in the heart, in words and intentions. Often, an act of kindness or a word of comfort can be more powerful than any sermon. Taking care of the body, physical preparation. Saint Michael also reminds us that the trials that lie ahead may not only be spiritual, but physical: crises, natural disasters, situations of scarcity. That's why he invites us to be prudent and prepared. This does not mean living in fear or paranoia, but being responsible and wise. Stocking up on basic necessities is not about accumulating in excess, but about ensuring that your home has essential supplies for times of emergency: non-perishable food, drinking water, basic medicines. This brings security and avoids despair in times of crisis. Taking care of your health. A weakened body is more vulnerable to difficulties. Mary reminds us that taking care of the body is also an act of love and responsibility. Healthy eating, physical exercise, and adequate rest are ways to prepare the body to resist. Practical skills. Saint Michael invites us to learn skills that can be useful in adverse situations. First aid, growing food, basic repairs. In difficult times, these skills can be the difference between dependence and autonomy. In addition, Mary reminds us of something fundamental: not to give in to fear. Physical preparation should not be a reflection of panic, but an act of prudence. It is not about surviving in isolation, but about being ready to take care of oneself and others. Prudence against individualism. The Virgin Mary warns us that preparation should not be selfish. We are not called to accumulate only for ourselves, but to share and support those around us. In times of crisis, love for our neighbor becomes even more necessary. We will be judged not by how much we accumulate, but by how much we extend our hands to those who need help. Mary teaches us that by sharing, we receive even more of divine grace. Often, true preparation is not just about securing material resources, but keeping a light heart full of trust in God. As she reminds us, what is necessary for the soul cannot be stored in cupboards, it is kept in the heart. Preparation is not despair, but faith in action. It is important to reinforce yourself. Preparing yourself does not mean feeding paranoia or living in fear of the future. On the contrary, it means acting with balance and serenity. Fear paralyzes, but faith guides. Saint Michael tells us to trust in God's plan, but be ready to face trials with courage. Preparation is an act of trust, not despair. God will not abandon us, but He calls us to do our part. The body and the soul are divine gifts, and caring for both is a way of honoring the Creator. In a world that seems increasingly fragmented and divided, the Virgin Mary makes a moving appeal to us to unite. This invitation to unity is not only a collective call, but also a proposal for internal, family, and community reconciliation. When humanity is fragmented into disputes, conflicts, and indifference, it becomes more vulnerable to darkness. But when we are united by faith and love, we become an unshakable fortress, a light that shines even in the darkest nights. Mary reminds us that division is not something new. Since the beginning, the forces contrary to good have used hatred, pride, and envy to separate hearts. The history of humanity is full of examples of how selfishness leads to ruin, and today it is no different. We see this division in families that drift apart, in friendships that break up over small disagreements, in the hate speech that feeds social networks. That is why the Virgin Mary calls us to be instruments of peace. She asks us to be those who heal and not those who hurt. She reminds us that words have power. They can be a weapon that hurts or a balm that consoles. In this spiritual battlefield, forgiveness is one of our greatest weapons. It is through forgiveness that we disarm the traps of darkness. How many times do we hold grudges that corrode the heart and weaken us spiritually? Mary tells us, "My children, forgiveness does not only free those who receive it, but also those who offer it." Unity is only possible where there is humility and the ability to start over. However, unity is not limited to family and friendship ties. It extends to our community. In difficult times, it is essential to be surrounded by people who share the same faith, and who can offer support and prayer. Mary encourages us to form prayer chains, to participate in group moments of reflection, and to seek strength in each other, because when we pray together, our spiritual strength multiplies. She also teaches us that unity is not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of love. In a world that values competition so much, we are called to be different, to share, to encourage, to lift up those who are fallen. It is through these simple gestures of kindness and empathy that we show the world what it means to truly be children of God. And in the midst of all this invitation to unity, she offers us a precious gift of hope. She reminds us that no matter how dark the times, the light of her sun will never cease to shine. The enemy wants us to believe that all is lost, that there is no more salvation, that there is no more goodness. But Mary tells us the light always triumphs over darkness, even when it seems fragile. Hope is not a fragile or naive feeling. It is the certainty that God is in control. It is believing that even when we can't see the way, He is ahead, guiding us. Mary teaches us that true faith is not trusting only when everything is fine, but staying strong even when everything seems to be falling apart. But hope needs to be cultivated like a flame. It can weaken if we do not take care of it with prayer, reflection, and good gestures. We are called to nourish hope through three fundamental attitudes: prayer, gratitude, and service to others. When we pray, we declare our faith in God's plan, even without understanding every detail. Gratitude strengthens the spirit. By giving thanks for small blessings, we show heaven that we recognize God's presence in our lives, even in the midst of difficulties. Service to others spreads light. When we are a presence of comfort in another person's life, we renew not only their hope, but also our own. Unity and hope go hand in hand. When we unite and call upon Mary, that same God declares, "You are my son and my daughter." To be a light of hope means carrying this hope and radiating it to the world around us. And perhaps you wonder, how can I carry hope if I myself feel lost? And Mary's answer is simple: come to me. She is our mother and intercessor. She calls us to seek refuge in her immaculate heart and allow ourselves to be guided by her, even to her Son. Because even when we have no strength, God can act through us when we surrender to His love. In this invitation to unity and hope, we are called to something greater, to be bearers of peace, comfort, and faith. The world desperately needs voices that remind people they are not alone, and you are called to be that voice. Even in the midst of darkness, Mary reminds us that her light will triumph. Now more than ever, she asks us, are you willing to be a light in this world? We have reached the end of this journey, but the purpose of this message does not end here. Each word of Saint Michael the Archangel and the Virgin Mary echoes as an urgent and personal invitation to transform your life and be a light in the midst of darkness. It was not by chance that you heard everything up to here. Heaven is speaking to you, and now the choice is yours. The heavenly revelations are not just information we hear and forget. They are a direct call to action. This message is not about living in fear or waiting patiently for the worst. On the contrary, it is an invitation to courage, living faith, and interior transformation. It is about strengthening yourself spiritually, acting with love, and preparing yourself with confidence. The time to decide is now. Mary reminds us, do not leave for tomorrow what can be done today. We are often tempted to postpone our most important decisions, waiting for a more propitious moment, but this wait can be dangerous. Spiritual procrastination weakens the soul and opens doors to doubts and distractions. Saint Michael warns us that time is running out, but he also reminds us that there is still a chance to start over, and that chance is now. Ask yourself what you need to change in your life. Maybe you have felt during this journey that something needs to be transformed. It could be a habit that takes you away from God, a hurt that you still carry, or a call to prayer that you have ignored. Whatever it is, know that it is not too late to take the first step towards a life with purpose and faith. Faith is not just something we feel, but something that we practice daily. Saint Michael teaches us that faith without action is empty. That is why heaven's invitation is for you to live with purpose. Set aside moments of sincere prayer every day. Strengthen ties with your family through charity at home, starting with small gestures of love and compassion. Mary reminds us that living with purpose does not mean being perfect, but being faithful to God, to His principles, and the love He left us as an example. Spread the light, share the truth. This message was not given to you just to be kept. Mary asks us to share this truth with those around us. We live in a world thirsty for hope, and many people are lost, searching for answers and a meaning to life. By sharing this message, you are not just informing, you are reaching out, offering faith and hope to hearts that may be on the brink of despair. You can do this in many ways. A word of encouragement, a prayer for someone who needs it, or even forwarding this message to someone who needs to hear it. Mary reminds us that every small gesture of kindness is like a flame that, added to others, illuminates the world. Don't walk alone. Be part of the chain of faith. The Virgin Mary reminds us of the importance of the community of faith. We do not need to face trials alone. We are called to walk together, supporting each other in action and testimony. A shared faith grows stronger and multiplies. Therefore, participate actively. Comment and share your experiences. Ask for prayers when you need them. Do not underestimate the power of a testimony. How many lives are touched and transformed when someone has the courage to say, I also went through trials, but I was sustained by faith. The promise of victory. No matter how frightening the messages about tribulations may be, Mary leaves us with a promise of hope. My Immaculate Heart will triumph. This means that the victory has already been announced, but it depends on our decision to be instruments of God. The triumph will not be just a future event, but a transformation that begins in each heart that chooses faith over despair, light over darkness. Saint Michael reminds us that those who persevere will not be forgotten by heaven. God is attentive to our struggles and will reward those who keep the faith even when all seems lost. The last call, what will you do now? If you have come this far, something inside you has been touched. Maybe you feel a weight lifting from your heart, or a new clarity in your mind. This is no coincidence. Heaven is calling you to take a stand, to make a difference in your home, in your community, and in the world. Mary asks us, are you willing to be the voice that spreads faith and hope? This is the time to make a decision. Don't wait for great signs. Start now, with a simple yes. Heaven does not expect perfection, but willingness. If this message touched your heart, share it with your family, your friends, and those who need to hear these words. Leave in the comments what you felt and ask for prayers, because we are a community united by faith. Subscribe, follow, and activate notifications to continue receiving messages that strengthen your faith and guide your journey. Together, we can face any challenge with the certainty that God is with us every step of the way. Remember, you are called to be a light in the midst of darkness. Respond with faith and courage, because your life will never be the same. May God bless you and your whole family. We will see you in the next message, because heaven still has much to reveal.